Hello and welcome back to Find Better Stocks. This is the series where I showcase one stock on the Better Stocks Index which I think has fantastic potential to grow. In this video, I'm going into Viper Energy Partners, who own, acquire, exploit and develop oil and natural gas properties in North America. This is a really interesting stock, not a traditional safe bet value stock like I'd normally like to look into, but I think you'll agree once you've seen the analysis that this looks like a potentially great prospect with great growth potential for 2019. So now let's go over to the Better Stocks dashboard. There's a link in the description below where you can access the Better Stocks dashboard and the Better Stocks Index for yourself for free. As you can see here, we're looking at Viper Energy Partners and we can see that it's in the energy industry. You can see the current share price at 24.8 and the large market cap just above $2 billion. So let's start looking at some of the value indicators in the blue box here. We can see a PE ratio, price to earnings ratio of 11.1. The price to book ratio is quite high. This is at 5.4. Like I said, this isn't a traditional value stock, but you'll see from the rest of the analysis why it looks so interesting. The dividend yield is very high, and overall this comes out at a value rating of 6.3 out of 10. This value rating is derived by comparing each of these indicators against every other US stock in the same industry, against those of Viper Energy Partners. Once Viper has been ranked against every other stock, we can derive this overall value rating, and we can see it gets 6.3 out of 10 for value. Not massively high, but let's move over to growth in the yellow box. We can see revenue, net profit and equity growth for the past 5 years. Revenue coming out at 134.8%, massive net profit growth 460.8%, and ridiculous equity growth, almost 4,000%. But let's take a little look into why these figures seem so high. Here we can see revenue growth year on year for the last 5 years and the trailing 12-month figure furthest to the right. That's coming out a really nice upward trend and it's looking really positive. Here we can see net profit, and this starts to explain some of the huge figures that we've seen above. Because there have been years of very minimal growth, even in 2016 there was a loss in the company of $11 million. And because that has now grown to these very large figures, $111 million for 2017, trailing 12 months is at $187 million, that growth has been huge. We can see that the huge increase that we saw for equity growth is actually mainly due to this year, 2013 to 2014, where it went from 0.66% of total assets to 99.62% of total assets. The more interesting thing to look at these is its current debt to equity ratio, and we'll see that in the next segment. So we can see that in the orange box here, the strength box. So we can see the return on equity, not so bad at 15.3%. More interesting, we can see a fantastic profit margin of 64.8%, which is extremely high, especially for such a high market cap stock. And we have another good figure here, the debt to equity ratio, only at 0.53. That shows that there's not a huge amount of debt in the company, which is of course always good for future growth. And overall those figures get Viper a strength rating of 8.3 out of 10 when compared against every other stock in its industry. And we can see here that the overall rating is 8.2 out of 10 when these three are averaged. That's a really strong score. But we have seen some unusual figures here, especially in the growth rates. So let's take a look at the PE ratio historically. We'll look at the historic share price and we'll look at some analyst recommendations for this stock. So first of all, we'll look at the historic PE ratio for Viper. So this is going from 2017. We can see that the PE ratio has been coming down, and is currently at its lowest level that it's been in all this time. If we open up to look at the last 3 years, there's a little bit of missing data here, but we can see that that trend has continued and it's at its lowest overall PE ratio for all of that time. We can see why that is when we look at the share price. Viper was on to have a really good year, but it's experienced quite a large drop from October, where it's decreased around 42.3%. But we can see that the past 3 years have been very favourable for Viper. Starting from 2015, at its peak it was up 145%, now it's just at 47%. So here we start to see a bit of opportunity. But let's see what the analysts are saying. Here you can see quite a number of analyst recommendations from September, October, November and December, and we can see that the overall consensus for this stock is very positive. There's a lot of strong buy recommendations there, there's a lot of buy recommendations, and there's only one hold recommendation. And we can see here below that is pushing it into the strong buy territory overall. Even more interestingly, we can see the current share price here at 24.8 is actually way below the confidence bandwidth, with the lowest interval being at 33 and the highest being at 57, average coming out at 42.47. That indicates that there might be an 80 to 100% upside for this stock. And looking at its fundamentals, I don't think that's impossible at all. It does look like a really strong stock. It's very cash generative, it's got this huge profit margin. The only thing that I would be slightly concerned about with this stock is this history of being unprofitable for 1 year. You want to play safe in the stock market generally. Luckily, this was only a small loss, and it was followed up the previous year by a huge increase and looks set to continue with the trailing 12-month figure. The debt is low, the fundamentals are strong, and the company looks like it may continue to grow. Analysts are also highly recommending this company, with a huge 80 to 100% upside potential. I think this could be a really smart investment for 2019, perhaps not the safest bet, but I do think it would be hard to lose with this stock. I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope you learned something new. If you have any opinions with Viper as an investment, please comment below. If you want to see more analysis videos, make some comments below as well. I always like to see what kind of things you'd like me to delve into. You can find out more about finding better stocks in the link in the description below, where you can gain free access to the Better Stocks dashboard and to the Better Stocks Index, which highlights the best 1% of US stock investments every single week. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.